good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us from different time zones. We are grateful you choose to spend the hour with us. I'm Lian Liu from Georgia State University Center for International Business Education and Research, CIBER, in Atlanta, Georgia. We come to you on behalf of the Cyber Networks MSI Consortium that are sponsoring and organizing this webinar series. We have had about 70 webinars since started in April 2020. As a reminder, these webinars are being recorded. If you want to watch again or forward to others, you can find the recording of this one and previous sessions on our GSU-CIBER website or our YouTube channel. Today's webinar is on the very important issue of sustainability, the meaning, the role, and boundary conditions of sustainability initiatives and entrepreneurial implications. It will be a conversation between Dr. Pinar Büyükbalcar, a Fulbright visiting scholar to Georgia State University from Turkey, and Dr. Cüneyt Yıldırım from Sabancı University, also in Istanbul, Turkey. Both speakers bring us not only their passion and expertise in sustainability and entrepreneurship. Together, they both have decades of experience in Turkey, a very important emerging market at the critical junction of global trade and geopolitics. So we are looking forward to a rich and informative discussion. Now I pass the virtual mic to Pinar.
Thank you very much, Lian. Thank you for the great introduction, and I want to welcome everyone here. And I hope this will be a very interesting and very fruitful discussion for all of us. Yes, the topic is really very a hot topic for the agenda of both the researchers and the companies, and we will be going into detail from several different aspects about the topic. So today I will be mainly moderating this session. I will try to heat up the discussion by placing some questions, and from time to time I will step in to share my comments on several aspects. So as Lian kindly introduced, I'm a visiting scholar. For now, I'm a visiting scholar at Georgia State University. I'm a Fulbright scholar, and I'm also an associate professor at Yıldız Technical University in Turkey, and my research field covers mainly entrepreneurship, international entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurial ecosystems, and all relevant topics, of course, among them sustainable practices and how entrepreneurs support the design and introduction of new business models and new practices to foster sustainability is another thing. Today we have a very, very distinguished speaker. So I want to leave the floor to Cüneyt for him to introduce himself and maybe just to give us some information about his relationship to sustainability, the topic of sustainability, and then we will be proceeding with the questions. But I just want to add another note. We really want this to be a very interactive discussion. So please, and I know everyone here is very much interested in sustainability. So please share your comments and questions by using the Q&A section throughout the discussion, and we will be focusing on them too. So Cüneyt, I want to leave the floor to you for you to introduce yourself, and then I will go with the questions. Your mic is not open.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lian. Thank you, Pinar. Thank you, Paula, for this great introduction. Well, it's about a passionate topic that we're together, and we'll try to highlight and do the best and make best use of the time. I'm heading up the non-degree executive education programs at Sabancı University. I'm the director of EDU there, and also overlook the professional graduate programs. And I also teach the executive MBA program on issues related with marketing and branding in particular. Over 35 years of my career, basically, I've been working in business and with business, basically being able to observe the developments throughout the decades and the current state, what the practice of business is doing or is aspiring to do, along with the academic developments and the various insights, valuable insights that are brought to the agenda by various academics. And because I also specialize in, through my PhD in IB, so the topic today obviously highly relates to the general framework that governs IB and will govern it even more moving forward into the future. And I have obviously, I have the opportunity to be working with our clients, and also as I'm a board member of a couple listed companies, to really observe how things are going on at the board level and in the both local and the regional areas. So I'll try to share some highlights in regards to this eclectic perspective set that I hope to bring in, and hope it will be worth for our listeners.
Thank you very much, Junaid. So as you just covered, yes, when we're talking about the concept of sustainability, it is related to so many aspects. It has relations with board decisions, it has relations with business model practices, it has relations with government regulations. So we can think of the concept as a multi-level, multi-layered concept covering micro, meso, and macro aspects. So just to simplify it, we know that it is related to the notion of protection and renewability of resources in general. But if we want to come up with a proper and comprehensive but practical definition of sustainability, how do you think we can define sustainability? Let's start with this.
Okay. Yeah, as you said, it's a pretty comprehensive topic area overall. And in terms of word meaning, it reflects on defense. We're trying to defend something. Okay, defendable, maintainable, amicable, etc. So that's what the sustain etymologically based brings to mind. So one way of looking into it from the business and the academic intersection is, I think, moving beyond Milton Friedman's statement. As you know, the very well-known motto says, social responsibility of business is to increase profits. Now, that I think is bound to change, and that is what all aspects, a lot of aspects of sustainability covered areas basically relate to. That businesses, obviously we need businesses, we need to grow them and develop them for all the good reasons they have, but it's not just for them that the results should be targeted. Now, the traditional perspective from the business side of business sustainability has been driven by growth and profitability. So when you talk to a business and like years back, traditionally, it's financial sustainability, competitive sustainability. So it was always limited to those. Now, what is different and requires a redefinition is that two other main dimensions have been put onto the stage. One is societal sustainability, and the other is ecological sustainability. Now, among these two new variables, they've been around for a long time, obviously, but mostly treated as nice to have rather than a must have kind of an objective. Now, the difference is these nice to haves are turning into must haves. And that's what will bring in academia with business practice and with the governments like a triad to come up with these new business models or new perspectives, new KPIs, new types of agendas. So it's an extremely hot topic as we speak. And the corporate, it's important to understand sustainability related activities are not limited to corporate social responsibility. CSR has been around for a pretty long time, but mostly around for PR activities, or at least not coming up to the top agenda in terms of objectives. So CSRs even do not qualify for sustainability projects. They are more complementary things happening. So sustainability should be approached at the bigger picture, and there are major forces that actually make this happen. Because don't forget, let's all be true. I mean, let's all be clear about something. businesses will not change unless they feel the need to change. And as businesses are created basically to grow and to make profit and to prosper, obviously they do that within the set rules of the game, or within the boundaries that are defined for them through the invisible hand, so to speak, through the governmental or legislative policies. So as long as you're in there, as long as you're operating within that kind of a frame, you can be a good corporate citizen, helping out economies, etc. Now, the main difference is that those boundaries need to be broken. And the businesses will not do it on their own for very understandable reasons. That's why different terminology is coming into play and are being discussed, such as inclusive capitalism, new form of capitalism, responsible capitalism, stakeholder capitalism. I mean, the expressions basically expand by the day. So a totally new era is being entered into, but businesses will always operate to maximize their returns. However, today, for them to survive, for them to be sustainable themselves, this will not be enough. And they have to. So that's why we're seeing more and more big conferences like UN, Davos, COP26, the European Union Green Deal initiatives, all of those things happening at an inter-country level among governments being discussed, and governments coming in with local legislation or policy revisions that basically change the boundaries of operation for businesses. So now businesses used to treat any effects, any side effects or spillover effects that were beyond their operation as externalities, as we always follow in IB literature as well. The difference is some of those externalities, and possibly most of them, are not externalities anymore. I mean, they are part of the original operation. And the only way that this becomes a reality is the boundaries that defined through legislation, policies, etc., are being expanded. So, and we can, give other specific examples to basically illustrate all this. But I think that's the bigger picture where we see things happening.
Yes, we will talk about it in detail. Thank you very much. It is so well articulated. So what I am underlining from this is there is very obviously there is a paradigm shift, and this paradigm shift involves a shift or a change about how we are defining the boundaries of operations of the companies. And we're now not talking about social, ecological aspects as different, let's say, philanthropy areas for corporate practices, but actually we're more and more realizing that they are so much interconnected and interrelated to our financial purposes and profit maximization purposes without realizing certain actions there, without realizing certain objectives in the social and ecological aspect. It is impossible for the corporations to realize their financial objectives. And thus we need to redefine the context and boundaries and include so many stakeholders, including not just the corporations, but also governments, non-governmental organizations, and customers. So there is a huge paradigm shift here. And it is very obvious that there is a sense of urgency about this topic. Yes, you're so right. We have been talking about corporate social responsibility since decades, maybe. But now, when we say sustainability, then it goes far beyond corporate social responsibility, and which is a very hot topic in the agenda because of sense of urgency. But we also see that this sense of urgency is not the same in each and every context. So how would you comment on these contextual differences about sustainability practices? So can we say sustainability means different things in different contexts? So what are the contextual conditions or things that affect our understanding of and practicing of sustainability?
there might be different ways of creating a taxonomy of different types of comparisons, but at the micro or macro level. But one approach might be how the business system operates and how well developed the business ecosystem is in a given country, region, etc. What I mean is, for businesses to run, you need the businesses. I mean, the shareholder, the owners, shareholders, the investors, etc. The people who will actually run the business. Those that provide financing to the business, the finance engine, where it's coming from. Those that are part of the ecosystem itself, the development of the infrastructure and the contribution each makes to the total value created, and obviously the customers who actually buy or rebuy, etc. All these things. Now, depending on the level of development of a given country, for instance, be it a developed country or an emerging market or developing country, etc., these contextual parameters are different. They are not at the same level. For instance, today, the big discussion about, let's say, climate change, one of the highly felt urgency headers. Well, the issue of climate change or carbon emissions, net zero, etc. Now, all of those have been the result of the operations that have been run for decades by a lot of companies, right? And so now they're in developed markets, for instance, and that's one important context as far as I can see. Those things have been done already. Now, obviously, the awareness is high to make sure that we need to take care of our reflections, so make good things. But for an emerging market, for a developing market, well, they're just trying to grow. Now, when you bring in impediments or limitations to how they will practice their business or change the parameters or boundaries of the operation, well, the emerging markets may actually debate that, hey, I mean, we didn't go through, we're not as lucky as a developed market to come up with our own big companies or infrastructures, etc. You've done your part, you benefited. Now it's our turn to do this. So we didn't result, I mean, this current situation is not a result of what we did. So that obviously brings a paradox. I mean, a significant paradox and conflict of interest between developed markets and less developed or developing markets. So finding a common ground is a huge challenge just on that side. When you look into B2b, B2C, that's another important context, I think. Industrial companies, markets versus consumer goods companies. Now we're seeing that industrial good companies and B2B companies are at the source of the production. Eventually, the B2C manufacturers buy from B2B companies. So some areas like climate change affects all industries sooner or later. I mean, it's an issue for everyone, but some of them are more relevant for some industries and not relevant for others. Like, I mean, clinical trials, for instance, okay, an extreme example. Clinical trial is extremely critical and material for a pharmaceutical company, but not relevant for a bank. Now, so industry differences also result in different approaches or different prioritizations given or made to sustainability issues. So here the issue is so big and requires such a, I mean, connected trial to make sure things happen. We need to start from a central common element, I think. From what I see today, I mean, if you look at the UN, United Nations, I'm sure everyone is aware of these things, so I'm just making reference. United Nations goals, the SG goals, Sustainability Development Goals, there are various themes there. Each one is equally important. But in practice, those that are more felt to be more material, that is, I mean, the threat is sooner or the impact is sooner, seem to be moving higher up on the agenda. Climate change is one of these, energy is the other, energy consumption. This is not to say diversity is not important. This is not to say food waste is unimportant. I'm just talking from the practical thing, the practice of these things. So because climate change or energy is a material concern an issue for all industries. It's industry free. So it has more, that's why we're seeing more energy put into those topics today in a concrete manner, with concrete steps, manifestos or commitments made, all those things. So, but we don't see as strong commitments in some other areas, right? So we need to accept this as a fact, I think. I mean, I wish everything was equally developed at the same time, but the practice does not allow that. The reality does not allow that. That's where we need to bring in a common point of what is really possible, because we have to have results. It's not the time to talk about things anymore. We need to get results and start from somewhere. And whatever somewhere is the common ground, I think is a good way to start off. I mean, the 2-degree increase in temperature in a couple decades, I mean, that's serious. That's serious for everyone.
Yes.
That's very impactful.
Yes. Thank you very much. I totally agree with that. So again, some points that I underlined. First of all, we need to have an integrated view, including everyone. So we need to have, rather than focusing on the practices of a single industry, or focusing on the practices of a single country, or focusing on the practices of a single corporation, we need to adopt a kind of ecosystem view, integrating all the other, all related parties. And also, we need to be realistic, not with a utopian perspective, but we need to be realistic about the priorities and the situation and conditions, because I'm at the same time trying to keep an eye on the comments and questions. So there was a comment there by Stefan. Pinar mentioned context of sustainability, but it is becoming more and more globalized. Sure. And we need to create that sense of urgency in a globalized manner. But the reality is not all industries, or not all countries, or not all corporations are capable of responding to this very important topic in the main, in the same sense, in the same manner. So how to make them become important actors, and how to make them stay on the same page. And Catalina also recommended a book, I guess. So thank you very much for the recommendation. You can take a look at the information about the book in the comments. And there is another one question for you. Dr. Evirgan, in distinguishing between developed and developing markets, said that in developed markets, most things have been done already. What things have been done? If you consider supply chain, energy issues, etc., dependence on fuel fossils, doesn't it seem we have barely scratched the surface?
That's a very fair comment. I'm sorry, I got misunderstood. What I meant, already things were done, was in the negative sense.
Yes,
so,
they have already
a lot of damage
exploited
has
the
already
thing.
been done
By
those companies growing up.
Did their part with exploitation. Yes, they already did their part with exploitation.
Exploitation, yeah.
Yes,
yep.
That was the thing. So if we want to relate the sustainability to a more practical, because we're talking about a concept with practical importance. So if we want to relate it to the more practical aspect, what kind of specific corporate practices can we think of to support the sustainability related goals of corporations? So we know we know of several business functions, and all of them are somehow related to sustainability, but some of them are sitting on the main stage when we are talking about developing sustainability related corporate strategies and practices. So which corporate practices and functions are especially related to sustainability? What do you think about that?
Well, there are many, obviously, but the one and the most important, I think, that will govern everything will be the board. How the board operates, how the board members, what kind of a diversity is represented at the board level. Now, if you think from the professional level up, I mean, an executive is successful if he or she meets the business results, right? Year-end results. The shareholder or the company owner is happy if the valuation of the company increases, if they can have a good access to good finances in good terms and for new investments, etc. And those things are all, I mean, the reactions, the decisions by corporations will always follow their original objectives in practice. I'm talking very realistically, okay? So that we get that perspective into the picture clearly. The finance institutions and investors here will play, and I have begun to play, a critical role to guide the boards, etc. Let me share with you a couple of survey results from different consultancy groups that kind of follow up this particular area. What's the situation at the board level? And what's the situation at the private equity company level? Okay, now, if you look at the financiers, the private equity companies who are looking for opportunities to invest, or finance institutions, the PwC survey of 2021 of last year clearly says more than 70% actually put in, always screen for sustainability goals and parameters when they're looking for a possible acquisition, etc. And they have 2/3 actually have policies for this. So that's the perspective of the private equity, okay? And I'll give you a concrete example as well. When you look at the board, what the board say or what their reaction is, well, still the PwC survey of last year says surveys, I mean, surveys done by board members, among board members with a lot of large companies around the 5 continents, more than half, 56% says too much time is spent on sustainability. So this is a big warning. This is a huge warning. So corporations who are essentially the main objective set at the board level and then executed through the management levels should walk the talk. So, I mean, talk is there, but we need the walk. We need the action. And action comes with plans. Sadly, a McKinsey report says that 55% of those boards who actually say that they've committed to net zero or sustainability, more than half do not have a plan for it. So walk the talk, simple to keep in mind. Walk the talk is extremely important. And we're seeing, I mean, there are other data that supports all this. So there is still a lot of way to go at the board level. Unless the board supports, no matter what the professional executives really want to do, things will not move. So, and the way that we see here is that the forces, there are forces on the SDG, through the SDG on the boards, which is the good news. The one big force is the escalating interest of investors, as I said. And a concrete example on this, Philips Royal, it's an electronics company, high-tech health industry, okay? Royal Philips just signed a long-term revolving credit facility for a total of 1 billion euros from 16 banks. Interest rate, not fixed. Guess, what is it based on? The interest rate to be paid by the company for this billion euro credit is dependent on its performance on sustainability goals. So a very clear example of what businesses need and what the resource suppliers, in this case finance, suppliers put in as a condition. That's how things will move. Okay, so the investor escalation. So two, there is an increasing escalation of social activism. And the technology has been a great facilitator on this, providing the infrastructure and making communication available throughout, unless it's obviously banned. So the social activism pointing various societal issues into the foreplay, be it labor issues, gender issues, race issues, educational issues, disadvantaged people, and all those. So we're seeing that on the rise. So there's pressure coming from the consumer or customer side. Three, there's a sense of urgency, particularly on climate change and energy, obviously, lack of energy. And last but not least, increasing interest of legislation putting into effect. So this system will transform when all of these work together. Because by the very definition of the standard Milton Friedman perspective is businesses leave all those social issues to governments or to the state. It's not the business's concern. So now those will have to be businesses' concern if these boundaries are redefined in this way, and the finance industry, access to finance appears to be a strong driver on this. This is one of those facilitators that will help the issue of sustainability to be on the agenda for developing emerging markets as well. Because developing markets, emerging markets need access to finance through funding agencies. Now, when either at the corporate level or at the governmental level. So when they're looking for a company from Turkey, let's say, okay, is looking for some finance, be it through the European Union or be it through a private bank, commercial bank, or an investor, as in the example I just gave, they have to make sure that even within the local context, they have a sustainability commitment. And they are reorienting, redefining their businesses' operations, or putting in related KPIs, putting in strategies along those things so that they can have access to the capital. So that seems to be a leveling ground, leveling force for all companies from all levels of development. So it's a multidimensional approach, and it's all together. That's very important, because unless these pressures come, this transformation will not happen, I'm afraid.
You're so right. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a perfect commentary on the very core of the issue. So, and it made it very obvious why we need to adopt an ecosystem-based view rather than just focusing on an individual actor, because it is it's a ground where we need to pay attention to several agents. It's a multi-agent actor, a multi-agent context, very obviously, and it also includes not just the market strategies but non-market strategies for several actors. And it is also related to one of the questions that I just saw here: beyond regulations, how can countries and governments ensure that corporations are sustainable and held accountable for doing so? It goes beyond the market strategies and includes non-market strategies and the collaboration of governments with some other NGOs and financial institutions, etc. maybe. So maybe we should also think about the role of corporations here, beyond specific type of corporations that we are very much used to talk about. So we are very much used to talk about the corporate social responsibility practices or sustainable to practice and strategies of big companies, multinational companies, big incumbents, big domestic companies, etc. But now the game has changed, and the new game plan should include a variety of firms, including new ventures and startups, and especially technology startups, to support sustainability strategies and practices of big corporations too. So at this point, I just want to put an emphasis on that, because without the collaboration of startups, think about all those new technology ventures operating in a very impactful way about agriculture technologies, for example, or think about all those new ventures introducing new business models to foster sharing economy practices. And think about different business models being introduced to the field. And I just underlined some dimensions about those, the circular economy, the word circular economy, but that concept requires a very brand new understanding on business models too. So when we look at those business models, and especially designed and practiced by new ventures in the circular economy, it bases on, for example, retaining product ownership rather than selling the product to the other party, transferring the whole ownership of that product to the other party, lending it, leasing it, sharing, etc. Those kind of business models are used to retain product ownership and sustain resources. Product life extension, the use of several technologies to come up with products with extended life cycle, and thus maintain and preserve resources and make several types of products more affordable and more accessible for disadvantaged parties as well. And new designs for recycling. So when you're working on new product development and manufacturing of that product simultaneously, you need to design the system for the recycling of that product. And big corporations are trying to transform their business models by paying attention to these pillars. And by the new technologies and new systems introduced by new ventures, there is really very fruitful collaborations going on there. So what do you think on these collaborations between new ventures, big incumbents, and the role of entrepreneurship there, maybe?
Well, that's a whole topic of a great discussion, obviously, Pınar.
Yes.
I mean, you opened a very interesting window. The startups are coming into the new economy, first of all. So they're coming in with most of them, the game changer ones especially, are using technology as a great infrastructure or enabler in coming up with those things. Actually, interestingly enough, today one of the emails was from the AIB group. Most of the attendees are there, I guess. Today that the UNCTAD report says the digital multinationals are growing significantly over the last 4 or 5 years, and profits have increased by 60% within the year. So these digital M&Es or digital startups, so to speak, in both regards, are actually using technology, a lot of aspects of technology, and similarly e-commerce that has been increased. So I will add that on top of as a side window as well, because the technology-driven companies, startups or e-commerce companies have actually, because of the very nature of their business, have created some environmental benefits, like paperless transaction, which is pretty obvious, I would say, or collecting the data, I mean, decreasing the footprint because of that. But more can be done, but more can be done again through using, in addition to the environmental benefit, using the data they have. So using data as a source of information on multiple grounds. For one thing, obviously, to increase operational efficiency. This is equally relevant for an industrial company or at the manufacturing site. Okay, it would be also a very good valuable source to understand the customers, so that, as you correctly noted, that companies can design products and services from the very outset, or rethink their packaging, or rethink their delivery channels or delivery methods accordingly, using data with the consumers and basically maximizing on that. But there is a lot of way to go still, because we need to be realistic. I'm very keen on that because I want to see improvement as fast as it can happen. World Economic Forum reports that only 9% of companies today actually use software to collect data on sustainability related implications. So there was a question about what corporates can do or corporations can do. So that is a simple executional example, a tactical example of what a company can do. So things should be done at all levels. It starts at the board. The commitment starts at the board, which is reflected down. But at the micro level, at the execution operational level, projects need to be built in to collect this data, to actually plan this and put KPIs for improvement, etc. I mean, corporations that have committed net zero by 2030, for instance, or by 2050, have to have plans in place today, because that net zero will not happen in a year or in 10 years. It will take a lot of time. But it should start somewhere. And things start with planning and with commitment of resource and with the encouragement of the board. Again, I go back and forth to re-emphasizing the board because it's so deterministic to make sure that things actually happen. I mean, remember Mr. Fraser, Kenneth Fraser, CEO of Merck Pharmaceutical. Okay, he came up and made a big statement. Businesses' reason of existence is to deliver value to society. He backed it up by saying, my board is behind this 100%. So that commitment is really, really very important.
Yes.
Okay, and things will not happen on their own. That's why we do need redefinition of the boundaries of operation, which includes taking societal and ecological issues at the forefront, at the main theme, in addition to profitability and growth, so that we find the right balance. I mean, so I mean, if in reference to technology, because you mentioned technology, a couple of other things might be like technology enables trackability. Trackability, what kind of a sustainable or environmental, let's say, negative implication your operation is creating. Before production, during manufacturing, after manufacturing, during disposal, etc. Okay, even things, I mean, through social media and through data. Just one more example. I think I mentioned this. We had a great conference, by the way, a couple of weeks back at Robinson, at GSU-CIBER, on corporate responsible business. And an interested investigator found out through tracking the data, waste material coming out of UK kitchens, UK households, that they ended up in Adana, Turkey. So this was brought about and created a lot of obviously issues because it was trackable, because of technology. So this, in essence, also comes in as another force that supports those that are passionate about sustainability, that things, awareness is going up, and at least the issues do not die away, and it becomes part of social concern.
Yes, thank you very much. So it's very obvious that by using data analytics, we can track what is going on throughout the whole chain, both for audit purposes and also for optimization purposes. So using data analytics, including digital technologies to our sustainability strategies and practices is very important. And also we already know that digital transformation and the use of digital technologies changes how companies manage their relationships with their stakeholders, how they reach out to them, and how their stakeholders reach out to those companies. So digital technologies, digitalization is right at the core of this discussion as well. And from there, I want to relate the issue to brand strategies and brand management, because perhaps that's one of the most important concerns for companies. So we need to do that. We need to communicate what we are doing in the best possible way to the society, because it's a part of our brand. And without a strong brand, then it's very obvious that corporation is just fading away in the marketplace, in the competitive business landscape. So how do they relate sustainability practices to brand management strategies, Junaid?
Okay, that's a great topic, obviously. I mean, marketing is dear to my heart as well. And marketing is such a powerful, and branding is such a powerful tool that it will create great results if used in the right way. Just one recognition there is, I would make reference to Philip Kotler. I mean, who is very well known, obviously, scholar in the area. And he has been coming up with marketing 1.0, 3.0, 4.0, and latest is 5.0. And his latest writings and blogs and sharings focus de-marketing, so that maybe we have marketed too much in the wrong direction, and maybe we should use the power of marketing in a way so that this sustainability issues are on the agenda of the consumers as well as the companies, and that this growth and sustainability for the corporations also does not create negative consequences. So marketing is an extremely powerful tool, obviously. When you look at the branding side, I would separate between B2B and B2C brands. Although the objective is the same, B2B, B2C environments are different. Because in B2C, the person you're trying to make an impact or the decision maker is an individual. And research in the UK, research in the US, research in Turkey, and I'm sure in other markets as well, clearly say, at least at the claim level, that individual consumers are willing to pay a premium to more sustainable products or are willing to support brands that actually follow sustainable practices. And that they would equally care, one Edelman report put this in numbers as well, that product features are equally important, but equally as what the brand stands for. So the transformation we're seeing in the marketing and branding area today is the criticality of the definition of purpose, the corporate purpose being built or reflected through the brand. So these mission statements being rewritten and the executional projects are being defined accordingly. Now in B2C, we see that the target market, there is awareness, there is some acceptance, the purchase intent is better with sustainable brands. And we're seeing many examples that are at the forefront of taking this flag and moving on, like Patagonia, for instance. I mean, from the startup all the way, because of the founders' original interest in the area, their famous campaign at one point in the, I think, late 90s was, "Don't buy this jacket," if you remember that. Some obviously refer to it as a clever gimmick to actually make people buy more or notice more. But if you read the content, and if you really do not try to read it in another way, they were focusing on recycling, circular economy. That don't buy what you don't need, buy only as much as you need, reuse, rewear. Now we're seeing today in the consumer markets, in retail in particular, that more and more companies like IKEA, H&M, Lululemon, I mean, many others are actually coming up with reused products, promoting reused, refurbished products and make branding on them and make developing business on them. We see in Sweden, there is a shopping mall that sells only recycled goods, for instance, a shopping mall built just for that. So the consumer side obviously is more active, more at the forefront, etc. I'm separating B2B because in B2B, whatever happens in B2B in terms of brand selection, the consumer is not there. The individual is not there. It's one business's managers versus the other business's managers in the negotiation or purchase decision or the partner decision. So it's a B2B relationship. So both parties need to believe in this at the same time. And Forrester Research has published a report which clearly pointed to the paradox, the B2B Purpose Paradox was the label, that B2B companies declare that they follow a great purpose. So that's the declared purpose, stated purpose when you read, but a huge gap exists between actually what they do. So the split between stated purpose versus actual purpose, huge gap, huge gap. So this is significant in B2B because both the buyer and the seller, they're both corporates and they both have their own objectives. So that's why we need a holistic perspective. I mean, the ecosystem, the supply chain, whether the original supply chain or the supplements coming in at whatever level, they all need to work together on this. And again, the pressure will come from the end buyer. So if consumers will reject to buy, obviously it will reflect back, but it will take a hell of a time to reach it to the B2B people. They're further down in the supply chain. But the finance investors pushing in for investment, etc. So in B2B, the investment requirements might be harder. And a lot of industrial companies, because of their manufacturing processes, obviously emit a lot of carbon and have those kinds of things. I know a couple of companies personally that have actually bought a dam, acquired a dam to create renewable electricity to sell in the market to neutralize their carbon emission. So these things are happening at the same time. That's another solution that they found, because they cannot reduce their carbon emission significantly because of the nature of the production. And it's not that easy for industrial companies to make that switch. Okay, and so that distinction, I think, is critical.
Yes, yes, it is. It is really very.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
yes,
really,
yes, of course.
Touches to different areas, and each require in-depth, obviously, analysis.
Very, very, very obvious. So when we are to talk about how to design strategies, marketing strategies, branding strategies, or operations related strategies, we're talking about different stories when we look at the B2C part and B2B part. So that's an important distinction to be made there. And also when we're talking about brand strategies or branding, we're not just talking about the brand in the marketplace in general. We need to also pay attention to employee branding, because again, our recent research, if I'm wrong, please correct me, puts forth that people wants to work for responsible corporations. People wants to work for corporations who cares about gender diversity, who cares about the protection of natural resources, sustainability, etc. They want to be a part of that team. So it's an important part for employee branding things. So when we say branding, we need to
totally agree. Especially critical because we're in that business as well. I mean, I'm in that market due to my position, especially for young talent.
Yes, and
Gen Z and millennials, especially
for them. And right at this point, I also want to refer to some questions in the Q&A, and one of them from Ron Gibson was about, and I want to relate the discussion to this while we're concluding. So how, in summary, how can we make our students to recognize how important this is, and how can we make it an eye-opener for them, let's say? So what about our business curriculum? What about our courses? How to integrate these issues to what we are doing in universities? We have a responsibility too, I guess.
We absolutely have. We absolutely have. I mean, I teach, as I said, marketing management at the Executive MBA program, and each and every year over the last 15 years, the amount of time I'm spending on the macro marketing and this responsibility thing is increasing. And for the very good reasons. Marketing has been responsive up until now. From now on, it needs to be responsible. And take on that eye. That's the marketing side of the thing. So I would really recommend the Sheth article, who actually also underlined that marketing has a lot to do, be it in new product development areas or reuse, recycle processes, packaging, product formulation. So marketing communication, obviously. So those who teach marketing, I think, can embed all of these real examples of what actual brands are doing. I would strongly recommend using good and bad examples related with crisis created because of not caring about sustainability, or great opportunities reached because of caring or being responsive to the marketplace. Processes to be redesigned in sustainability, operation research. I mean, any operations course, operations related course. Data analytic area, if you look at that business analytics side of the thing. Again, projects focusing on using data to follow up sustainability. It will always boil down to people issue, HR, organizational behavior and strategy. So in every, or the fact that access to finance, corporate financing being affected by sustainability measures or assessed against sustainability measures is a finance area topic. So in all disciplines under a business school and all courses, there is ample room, ample relevance to embed the concept of sustainability. ASCSP accreditation is being updated to include these. So the move is in the right direction, in other words. It's just a matter of getting on the wagon and helping with the pedals to speed up, basically. So the more this is done in a cohesive manner, in an integrated manner, the better, the more impactful results obviously will come up.
Sure, sure. And also, I've always thought like sustainability, when we're talking about sustainability and when we think of the comprehensiveness of the topic, it is very obvious this is an interdisciplinary thing. So we
Absolutely.
cannot just teach them or create a kind of awareness for our students by just looking at from the business perspective, for example, or by just looking at from the engineering perspective. So maybe we should really come up with innovative course designs or curriculums to include different scholars from different fields. Let them hear about an architecture, let them hear about an engineer, maybe from different aspects. That would be an eye-opener too.
I would strongly, second that, Pinar. If you have a course in business ethics and corporate responsibility, that's not enough. You're
Yes.
not doing your part, I think. Because when you have a course about something, that's limited to that course. But the issue is interdisciplinary. And the topic, in terms of its relevant highlights, should be embedded into each and every course at varying degrees, obviously. I'm not saying at the same dose, so that students actually realize that we're not talking about a functional thing, but we're talking about something that is equally important for each function that they may work on or they may study. I see this to be very critical.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you have just a course on this, it's a great thing, obviously, it's better than nothing, but still it will be one checklist item. Did you take that course? Yes. It's not that easy. We need to make sure that we do our part strongly enough in a passionate way and remind them how manufacturing impacts, how human resource practices impact, how finance decisions impact, etc., etc. Okay, so there are very different implications. Just one, since I said HR, we're running out of time, but one thing that about the boards, for instance, what can you do? There was a question like that as well. Maybe I missed to answer that in that regard. Linking board compensation and executive compensation, bonuses, short-term and long-term financial incentives to performance measures. And this has started. Apple is doing it. Shell started. BP started. So we're seeing companies actually changing their compensation schemes, bonus compensation schemes, and linking them to sustainability parameters.
Very, very important. And yes, we're running out of time, but maybe relatedly, Bruce previously asked about how do we begin affecting accrediting bodies for institutions of higher education to include sustainability. I think it is on their agenda right now. We were talking about Times Higher Education recently, so they're coming up with certain commentaries and rankings to this end. So yes, now universities and higher education institutions are part of the game plan, obviously. And from now on, we will be thinking on this more. So we have covered several aspects, of course, starting with the definition of sustainability, then about the main actors, corporate practices, the use of digital technologies, macro things, micro things, and the education part. But it is obviously very comprehensive, and there is a lot to talk about this. I hope we were able to create a kind of awareness, and thank you very much, Junaid, for sharing all those precious comments and information with us. Are there any concluding remarks that you want to put in emphasis?
Thank you so much. I'll make reference to two things to top it off. One is from the CEO of Sabancı Holding in regards to their awareness and sensitivity about climate change issues. He says, we're fighting with the nature. If we win this fight, we will lose. I think it's a very good summary, very strong, very good summary. And the second is World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2022. The theme, which is coming up, The theme is history at the turning point, government policies and business strategies. And I bet the issues related with sustainability, be it the Green Deal, be it the COP, be it the energy issues, be it the finance issues, will cover a lot of sessions, as they are also covered in the upcoming CIBER conference in Norway. So the issue is right on top. So we look forward to contributions.
Yes.
Thank you very much for a very nice moderation.
Thank you very much. It sums up everything. So thank you for our contributors too. And I want to leave the stage to Leanne. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pinar and Junaid, for very enlightening conversations. And thank you everyone for joining us from all over the world. Please give us feedback as you exit. We look forward to seeing everyone next week on the topics of emerging trends in international entrepreneurship research. Have a wonderful day.